Welcome back to Taylor by Nature, where I discuss topics pertaining to nature, our true nurturer. Today's topic of discussion, we're going to talk about eating and how that one action alone is actually prominent throughout the entire Bible. It is what caused the downfall of Adam and Eve because they were warned not to eat of a certain tree, and they did. So when we look at the Bible, and we have to look at it in how it was written in its original form, in the original construct of the scriptures. It was written in the Aramaic language, and that language actually creates images of itself by mirroring functions in nature. So when someone say eat, you cannot look at it in an English understanding and just think it's just the mouth itself. You have to look at it in a holistic way as far as what would that entail when someone say eat, what would that entail? And look at the functionality of the mouth and see what other parts of the body does that same function. Um, so in terms of eating, the body, our mind taking things expels it. Our nose taking air expels it. Our mouth taking stuff expels it. And for the female, her pudenda, the mouth below her waistline, taking things and expels it. All other orifices on the body are opening on the body is for exit only, not for intake. And so when we look at the function of eating in that aspect, it makes sense because the language we used before creates image of itself by mirroring functions in nature. So the first instructions that was given to Adam and Eve, they were told to be fruitful and multiply, and that requires eating. So how do they eat? Be fruitful and multiply by reproducing. And what they use to reproduce? The mouth below her waistline. That's the eating she does when the Most High told her to be fruitful and multiplying. That's the eating the Most High want her to do. Later on in Genesis, we see that they were warned not to eat. And you were saying, but they told them to eat. Yes, they were told to eat initially, but later on they were told not to eat of a certain tree. In English, we look at tree and we said, that doesn't make sense. That's because we have to remember, we're speaking English. It's an ideological language. The language is not based on nature. It actually opposes nature. So you'll get a different understanding from what the actual true original thoughts and functionality of that word actually mean. So when we look at tree, we have to consider what a tree is. A tree have offspring. What else have offspring? Humans have offspring. Angels have offspring. And so it represents humans and it represents angel and it represents tree as well. So the word tree, that's what it represents. In a deeper research and understanding of the word tree, remember the Aramaic language is written and it reads and they write it and read it from right to left. So if the word tree is mirrored or turned backwards, it's spelled the word ear. If you look in English concordance, what does the word ear mean? It means a watcher angel. So that's why Eve was warned. They were warned not to eat of the tree in the garden. And that particular tree in the garden, it was pertaining to a watcher angel. And so that's what they were told not to eat from. So Eve particularly. So when you see that eating is considered intercourse or fornication, everything's starting to make sense because they were told to fill the earth or replenish the earth. And then they were later warned not to eat of a certain tree. And when you found out that tree they were told not to eat of, it was talking about another, it was talking about a watcher angel. But as what took place, the first involvement of forest mimicry and psychology was brought into the world when the angel or the watcher angel used mimicry while Adam wasn't there. It transformed itself. So when you see people transforming or doing surgery to transform themselves and all this stuff into a male or female, this is not new. This is very, very old. From the beginning, this happened. So the angel, the watcher angel, they're Adam older brother, which they're different from us. They're not made from Earth. They're from somewhere else, and they have the ability to transform or transform. They could mimic things, and so it mimicked a white version of Adam. And if you read in the Aramaic, you would see that Eve was going back and forth. She was like saying, "Why do you look that way?" And he would pretty much using mimicking psychology to convince her that he found a way to look like this and all. And it's going back and forth, and he convinced her to have intercourse, which was why she was punished, because she was warned not to eat of that particular tree. Her body was meant to eat the seed of a man or grow the seed of a man, not to grow or carry the seed of an angel. That's what the sin that happened in earth. They were made for earth. There was no other seed that she's supposed to carry other than the seed of a man, not the seed of an angel. So when we look at that, that's what we have to, like I said, we have to take everything back from an ideological concept, which is English, and move it back to a natural based language, which is the Aramaic, a language that mirrors nature or natural laws that governs us. And so that was the Eden that actually took place in the garden. And so once the Adam older brother, which is called the watcher angel or seraph, once it mated with Eve, keep in mind it didn't know that it was able to impregnate Eve. He had no clue. So the whole term about killing two birds with one stone, I guess this probably was the beginning of this terminology, where it mimicked Adam and, like I said, it tried to impregnate Eve. It didn't know if it was going to be successful or not. And then later on, it transformed itself into a look-alike Eve. So there was a pale version and a melanated version of Eve. And they end up having a threesome. So, like I said, when you look at the world and you think that things are new, there's nothing new under the sun. Remember, nature haven't changed. Our form and function or biology haven't changed. And because these things haven't changed, you still get the same outcome because our anatomy and physiology still function the same. So the term that there's nothing new under the sun, yeah, everything been tried before. There's nothing new. So all these things we see in effects of as what's going on today with, I guess, homosexuality, having threesome, having all these wild, hot girl summer. None of these things are new. These things are very old, and they're timeless in a way because nature doesn't change. So all these things are timeless. These are we're going through cycles. Cycle in, cycle out, cycle begin and cycle ends and cycle restarts. So there's nothing new. It's just we're going through cycles, and our action determine how we progress from one cycle to the other. So back to the story as Adam and Eve's story, but they actually the angel transformed herself into a lookalike Eve, and the of course Eve, based on her experience, and it's in America said that she liked it, she got hot, she got wet, and all these things, and she liked the experience of For's intercourse, and so she convinced Adam to into a threesome, and of course the angel, it transformed itself into a, I guess, pale version of Eve, but it couldn't get pregnant because it doesn't have a womb. So it managed to get Eve pregnant, and she ended up having Cain and Abel, but it couldn't get pregnant. And like I said, you see the first stepdad, you see Eve having two husbands. And so, like I said, is the first the book of Genesis. It is actually, it doesn't mean beginning. In a way, it does, but you have to look at the root of the word and keep in mind what it is. So the word Genesis is the informal plural for the word genes. What is genes? A unit of heredity that is transferred from parent to offspring to determine some characteristic of the offspring. So, like I said, when we look at the Bible, we're thinking the Bible is some kind of biblical or spiritual book or something. No, it's about anatomy and physiology. It's about our form and function. It's about genetics. And we see in there that there was another male that they were told not to eat from because the womb of Eve was meant for a human male seed, not an angel male seed. And so when you read Genesis 3 verse 15 about the enmity between the two offsprings, that's where that come from. So the Genesis is talking about genetics. It's talking about offsprings and characteristic of offsprings and all these things. The angel was pale and white like the moon. And of course, when Cain and Abel was born, they have the same characteristic as their father, pale and white like the moon. So this is where all the whole thing come from. And like I said, when you look at in our society today, because everything is based on our form and function, and our ancestors, I know as growing up, ancestors always tell us not to eat from strangers because they will lead you astray. When you think of that concept, it happened in Genesis. Who was a stranger? The watcher angel, and which they were warned not to eat from strangers, because strangers they weren't. First of all, the intent is selfish, just like Adam's brother, the elder brother, the watcher angel. His intent was jealousy and selfishness, because he coveted Adam, his inheritance, which was the earth, and he also coveted Adam's wife, and which is why he destroyed them. How did he destroy them? The angel, because of what the abilities they could do, they're also known as transmutators. So when because of their characteristic of their DNA, when Adam and Eve initially mix with them or fornicate with them, that's why they were warned, and that's why when you see the word that they became naked, Yeah, they became naked because they lost their melanin. They had the melanin covering. Remember, they're from Earth, so they had a melanin covering to protect them from the sun. And because they fornicated with the Watcher Angel, and the Watcher Angel were transmutators, they end up losing their melanin covering, and they became naked because of the interaction, and that's why they died as well. That's why both of them died. They they didn't live for one day, which is 1,000 years. So Adam lived for 900 and something years. I think Eve was right behind him with 930 years or something. So either one of them lived for one day. They died within 1,000 years. They were never meant to die, but they died because of what they did. So when sin came into the world, it was the mixing of unique species. You have one species who's from somewhere else that's pale and white like the moon, and you have another species, another unique species, which is off the earth, from the earth. And because they were never meant to mix together, and that was a sin. That was death. That was the action brought sin into the earth. And like I said, the angel, because wherever he was from, he didn't follow laws there, and he got kicked out. So of course he's a rebel, and because he's a rebel, he came to earth and did the same thing, cause havoc and destruction. And so, like I said, he planted his seed here, and because he wanted to start his family here, and he was jealous of his brother, so he took what his brother had. So when we see these characteristics in the Bible with Esau, the fight between Cain and Abel, that is just displaying some of the characteristic that got picked up from the Watcher Father, the angel father. Remember, he was a rebel himself. He broke the law. He got kicked out of heaven or wherever he came from. He came here, continued to break the law. His children broke the law because they're a reflection of him or have the characteristic of him. Cain murdered his brother Abel, and it said slew. Again, we have to look at these words, and because these words are telling us, giving us clues. When you look at the word slew, it actually means to devour. And the English version doesn't tell you this because the English language is designed to hide the truth. Cain actually murdered his brother, ate his brain, ate parts of his body, and then he put him on an altar and sacrificed him, which is why his sacrifice wasn't accepted, because he actually put his brother on the altar as a sacrifice. Yeah. Also, when we look at it, a lot of people, they come up with different ideas why Cain wasn't avenged. And the reason why he wasn't avenged, because eating people was against the law. So remember, the law back then was an eye for eye and a tooth for a tooth, right? But no one could avenge Cain. Why? Because cannibalism was against the law, so no one could avenge his death. To this day, when you look at the word cannibal, it actually have the word Cain and Abel together. That spell is memorialize, the word cannibal memorialize the name of Cain and Abel. So, like I said, we have to look into the detail of these things, and like I said, the biggest thing is we have to translate the words back to their original form. And if we don't do that, we're always going to actually misinterpret, which is why Revelation 22, 18, and 19 tell us not to add and take away from the word, because when you add to something, you scribe it. the word scribe means to add. And when you scribe something, you add your own ideology or to it, which take it from like the whole story of and the Bible and Adam and Eve. They take it from a biological sense into some kind of mystic and spiritual sense. That's how the Bible is interpreted today, because the language you're using is ideological language. So these things seem mysterious and all these things when everything is actually biological, because we are biological. So the things around us are biological. Everything on earth is biological. So there's no mystics or anything to our understanding, because it's pure anatomy and physiology. Our body is a complex chemical process. So all these things we have to think about. So like I said, we have to translate these things back to their original form and function for us to truly comprehend and understand what's taking place. Because I think the they have really done a great job of for us creating an illusion of for us what for us to think and what for us to believe. So you have to think from the first language of truth, then as language keep changing, it changed for the purpose of manipulating people. That's why it kept changing. Because and right now, the English language is the furthest we have been away from nature. The language itself opposes natural law, which is why people run around and doing all these weird surgeries and cutting things off and putting things here and putting things there. Yeah, the reason why they're doing that because that's what the language does. It opposes natural law. Just like Cain opposed natural law and kill and eat his brother Abel, the people who descend from them, they're doing the same thing. And in the Bible, it said that the Israelites, they were prohibited from doing, getting with or mixing with other race of people, and is because it's due to genetics that they did that. It's based on genetics, and genetics are memories. They carry certain characteristics. They carry certain things, genes, and all these things. They carry a lot of things, and they realize that certain people are built to do certain things. They're built to do certain things. They're built to carry certain characteristics, and some of these characteristics are not good. Very demonic characteristics, and so the goal was to stay away from them, and reproduce within their tribe and within their family. So I hope this was of interest. So that's the Aramaic take and eat, because everything we do today involves eating. The information we receive, it could be destructive or it could be positive. The air we breathe, based on how we treat the earth, could be destructive or positive. The food we eat could give us long life or give us horrible health. The people we mate with, our children, could be healthy or unhealthy. So we have to think of all these different characteristics and different belief system. I know in some nations they even do DNA tests before they get married. I know when people when you go to the hospital, if you want to give blood, you have to do a blood test. So it's weird that we do a blood test when we give blood, but when people get married, no one get a blood test. But like I said, some nations still do blood tests. Why? Because they understand that there are different types of blood, and blood doesn't mix. Not all blood type mix. But here in the West, we ignorantly just marry people without any blood tests or anything. Even though when we go to the hospital to give blood, we have to get blood tests to see, make sure they're compatible. Very strange. But like I said, we're speaking a language that opposes natural law. So the things that were common at one point is no longer common or normal. I hope this was of great interest and speak to you guys next time.